So these powers that be have already started messing around with this, and they've taken the paperwork world into another level. They've taken it into the level of corporations. So what is this? What is a corporation? Now, a corporation is not a living man or woman. It's a fictional thing. Someone has made up this concept of a corporation. But what is it? Well, it is an entity. It's an entity, but it has a single purpose. The purpose of a corporation is to make money. That is its only purpose, to make money and accumulate power. But they're really the same thing. You could argue they're making money to accumulate power, or they're gaining power to accumulate money. It's the same thing. But that is all it does. It's an entity with a single purpose of making money. But it's not a living thing. It's fictional. It's paperwork only. So it's not alive. Therefore, this common law does not apply to it. You can't hurt it because it hasn't got an identity. You can't steal its property. It hasn't got anything. You can't make an agreement with it because it's not alive to have a discussion. This is an entirely fictional entity. And it's in the paperwork world only. Now, this is very, very dangerous for us. It's very dangerous for us because the law does not apply to a corporation. But but they can't just do this in front of us. They've got to give it a semblance of law. So they've created legal. So the legal world applies to corporations. Does not apply to living men and women. But it's a semblance of law. It's acting as law. So we can think, oh, it's law. It's not. It only applies to these dead entities. They're dead. They're not alive. Fictional entities. But these things are evil because they have no ethics. They have no morals. Remember, they have a single purpose to accumulate money and power. And they do that as well by absorbing each other. Each one, they're like eating each other up. So they become monopolies. The end goal is a monopoly. But even if you have a monopoly, that gets very obvious. So they have to sort of write it in their legal terms. No, we're not allowed monopolies. But of course they are a monopoly. You see, all corporations, it's inevitable, it's going to be one at the top. It's going to be one at the top, and that is the Crown Corporation. So it might be something else, but let's call it the Crown Corporation. So it's whoever had this idea of creating something called a corporation, well, they're the king now. They're the king of all corporations. The very idea of creating a corporation goes against the natural law. So by definition, when you create a corporation, you are already breaking the law. So that none of this is lawful. It can only be legal. And the way I look at it, let's look at it like this. The way I look at it, a corporation has a sole purpose to make money. So it doesn't follow the laws, but it has rules. It will have rules, i.e. the legal system of rules. But it will follow something that I call the rules. It follows the rules of acquisition. Now, if you are a Star Trek fan, there was the old Star Trek, I think it might be Deep Space Nine. There was an alien race in there called the Ferengi. They were green, had great big ears. And they, of course, they were mercantile. They're always about business, making money. That's all they were about. And of course, they were crooks. They would cheat wherever they could. But they had these things called the rules of acquisition. And they all learnt them. And they lived their lives by the rules of acquisition, acquiring money at all costs. And the rules of acquisition boiled down to simply get as much money as you can, as fast as you can, by any means necessary. That's essentially the rules of acquisition. Now, they've given a lot more detailed rules of ways you could do it. But you see, that goes against that. What is the fastest way to get money? Well, cheat. You cheat, you get money quicker. Steal, well, you get it instantly. Harm, yeah, get rid of the people who take their stuff. But again, rules of acquisition, you've got to think the big game. You know, you don't just go and, you know, extinguish everyone, take this stuff, well, it's all over. You want to have, as I mentioned in the last lecture, slaves working for you, building up, so you can keep getting bigger, more and more and more money. So the rules of acquisition are the long game of the corporations. But this is the dark side of the force. This is the light side of the force. So we need a better system, a system that allows us to run this. And we don't need this at all. We don't need this at all. And you see, this is how the state, again, as I mentioned in the last lecture, another dirty trick that the state has done is they've created a trust fund. They've essentially enslaved us with the birth certificate. And the birth certificate is used to create credit. And that credit is bought and sold and lent upon to make money. And that money goes into a trust fund that ultimately goes back to the state. But if we can step up and claim it, it becomes ours. Now, how do they do that? There's a bit more detail to this. They create a birth certificate, but they really create two. So they have one certificate on this side. That's this. It's a certificate of live birth. So here you have, a real living man or woman, boy or girl is born. But they create a second one. They create another one over here. And this is, let's call it stillborn. Stillborn. It's more like a dead, a dead birth certificate. And really what this is a corporation. In the corporate world, it's all got to be legal. It's got nothing to do with law. But they've got to follow their rules of acquisition, their legal system, and they have a code. They have their own language. That language is called Unified Commercial Code, UCC. It's a real thing, worldwide language, very difficult to understand. And they use this code to operate all their systems amongst themselves. This is like the unspoken rules of pirates. They've all got to sort of work together, but they're all competing as well. This is a world of competition. This world is not competing. This world is protecting the integrity of a sovereign. This world is destroying each other. These are all fighting. This is the snake eating its own tail. So you see, so they have their own secret language. And in fact, what they've done now in this paperwork world, they've made everything into a corporation. Everything is a corporation now. You might think government is not yet. Government is every little police station, every road, every celebrity, every politician, every council. Everything is a corporation. Everything has been incorporated. In other words, they have taken everything from this side and put it into this side. And because everything is a corporation, now the rules of acquisition apply. Now we can do whatever the hell we want. And again, the rules of acquisition, the smaller businesses are eaten up by the bigger business. And it all goes up to the top, the Crown Corporation. Or if you like Resident Evil, you can think of this as the Umbrella Corporation. And what they've done to us is they've created a birth certificate. A second one is more like a dead certificate. They've given us a surname, and this is actually a corporation. So they've created a certificate for us that is corporate. Now, this certificate of us is in the corporate world, and they can do whatever they like to us under these rules and under UCC. And the deception is, we don't know this. There's a live certificate. We don't see this one. This has gone off somewhere. This is the one we get. And this one is copyright of the Crown Corporation. They own us. Well, they own them both. But this is how the tricks work. And now this side is the creditor. We can create credit from here because this is a living man or woman, boy or girl. This is going to do some work. Use this credit to supply money for the corporate world. But this one then is the debtor. So they make this one liable. So now in this world, you're the debtor. You create your own credit, but then they lock you in this world and make you pay it back again with interest. That's how they do it. So this is very, very dirty tricks. But we don't understand how any of this works, and they keep us ignorant on purpose. All this is secretive. UCC, very complicated. We can't understand it. Even this is difficult enough. This is impossibly difficult. Now, like I said, if you want to do any sort of business in this world today, they want you to do it through corporations. But why should we do business this way? This is evil. Like, again, if you talk about demons, what is a demon? A non-physical entity that is trying to absorb your soul, bleed you dry. That's a corporation. By definition, that's a non-physical entity, a dead entity, trying to bleed you dry. Its sole purpose is to accumulate wealth and power. Nothing else. It has no care, has no ethics, it has no responsibility. And herein lies the other thing. A corporation was invented, the concept of a corporation was invented to absolve any living man or woman of responsibility or liability. So now anyone can do something in the name of a corporation, but this is not liable to the law. The law doesn't apply to it. This is just an excuse to break the natural law. We do not need this side at all. We do not need the corporate world. So how can we break out of this? Tricky, very, very tricky. And I'm still in the process of understanding this and researching it, but at some point I'm going to be getting out of this. So bear that in mind. Everything I'm talking about here is theoretical. I have not done this. This is the theory of it. But there are people that have. Many people. And I'm going to leave links below to the Sovereign Project, who are doing a lot of work to explain this. And they know a lot of people. They've broken out of this system. But I'm going to just tell you now what you have to do, what we have to do to get out of the system is we have to reassert ourselves. We have to create our own paperwork.